We have started to record the most recent session of SPCH 1113, Introduction to Public Speaking, for the first summer session. It is technically the end of our first week of 5 of instruction. It is Thursday, May 26th, 2022. A reminder that we are only going to be meeting 4 days next week: Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. And the reason that I say only 4 days is ordinarily during the summer, our second week, we meet 5 days to make up for only the 2 or 3 that we would meet during the first week. But because of Memorial Day, it will be Tuesday, the next week of instruction, next week. I wanted to remind all of you in the first minute that as of right now, there are 14 people in the course. Over the weekend, both on my website and for all of you at Blackboard, I am going to have an official listing as to who is going to be speaking on day 1 and day 2 during the term. Right now, I have an unofficial list, so please make note. Here are my day 1 people who will be giving all of their speeches on day 1 during the term, meaning that the demonstrative speech next week will be 1 week from today. Those people are Burgess, Davis, Easter, French, Glover, Graves, and Griffin. Again, day 1, you will always be speaking on the first day. Next week only will be Thursday. After that, it will be on Wednesdays. Day 1, Burgess, Davis, Easter, French, Glover, Graves, and Griffin. Our day 2 people: Jones, Kemp, Martin, Pearson, Reyna Garcia, Victors, and Wright. The day 2 people, one more time: Jones, Kemp, Martin, Pearson, Reyna Garcia, Vickers, and Wright. Again, all of that information will be made available on the website. I'll probably also later today send out a tweet. We still don't have an official class roster. You may recall I told you at the outset earlier this week, there were 18 people in the course right now. Whenever I go to the official course listing on Campus Connect, or I go to the Blackboard gradebook, those are the 14 names that I have. But before we go any further, a friendly reminder as to where you can go to access information, to access course videos, because a big part of this is not only watching me, obviously, through the course videos, but improvement from your own presentations that you'll be submitting all during the term. 8 of the 19 class sessions. You guys are the stars with those 4 presentations over the 8 class periods, day 1 and day 2 from the next 4 weeks. So one more time with feeling. The home page on Blackboard as you see it. Next week, it will be listed as the first week of June, obviously. But in this case, again, to review the archives, tools, Blackboard Collaborate Ultra is next. The Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday sessions of next week from the 31st to the 3rd are already listed if you want to join us live. At the vertical bars, go to recordings. That was what we did on Tuesday. Here's what we did yesterday. In case any of you ever want to access the archives and watch them over again, or scroll through for something that I said, or even for something that you've done or your classmates, here's how you do it. Little bits and pieces from yesterday's class session. We have started to record the most recent session of SPCH 1113, Introduction to Public Speaking, for the first summer session. It is Wednesday, May 25th, 2022. A reminder, we have 3 class periods this week: Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. Next week, because of the Memorial Day holiday, we will meet on 4 days: Tuesday, taking Memorial Day off, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday, making up, as I indicated yesterday, for the day that we miss for Memorial Day. It will be the only Friday that we meet during the term. You'll notice that the nice part about this platform is that you can communicate, as the young lady is here, professionally, June 2nd, or Friday of next week, June 3rd. And as long as I have them by class time and I can play them during class, you'll be fine. So this topic is on positive co-parenting. As we did with the first presentation from Jocelyn, notice how Sarah has her speech set up. Fall intercession of 2020 during the month of December. We'll put it on closed captioning to check in terms of we need to double check because sometimes the closed captions are not 100%, and we need to make sure that the font style is 100%. In the case of Jocelyn, she had the photographic perspective, so her visual for the webcam took up a big part of the screen. Not that way with Sarah.
Right. And I was so dainty and careful with every single piece as I was doing it because I didn't want to snap it. I thought,
Card, if you want to do something that is a little bit demonstrative or a little bit informative or a combination like what you saw with motherboards and big hands a moment ago from Merrick, same thing with Essence. In the same way that you saw Merrick show off his personality in a positive way, same thing with the quality in terms of the improvement of the public speaking skills and the likability and knowledgeability of Essence.
Color is a slate ground top to blend in with ocean floor and a white belly.
Points for the course. As we conclude today, which is now session 2 out of 19, keep in mind that time management, as you know from the syllabus, is essential to your success. And isn't it ironic, and I didn't plan it that way, that the speech from Jocelyn Keller during spring 2020, during the pandemic, on Loom, dealing with procrastination, was one of the presentations that we looked at today. So even though our graded presentations don't start until 1 week from tomorrow, day 1, demonstrative Thursday of next week, day 2, demonstrative will be on Friday, start thinking about how to go to my YouTube channel, go to my website, and we'll be doing this tomorrow and Monday as well, in terms of research, topic selection, what you feel comfortable talking about. And I'll also go back, as I did yesterday, to Loom, just in case you want to get a free subscription so you can utilize what some of the others have done. We will continue with content, delivery, and visuals for tomorrow's class session. So good luck in your respective speech preparation processes over the next 8 days as we start to work on demonstrative speeches. As for SPCH 1113, Introduction to Public Speaking, during the first summer session of 2022, that concludes the recording session for today. And a shout out to those of you who are here with me live, because we were experimenting before class. Whenever you see the timestamp as to when today's class period officially began recording, it's much later because of the following factor. I have a very nice computer set up here with the ring light. I also have Bose computer speakers. The challenge I'm facing is whenever I'm playing any of the videos back, ordinarily I'm listening to them through my speakers, But as you'll notice, whenever we play video back during class from either Tuesday or Wednesday, and you noticed it here, there's a little bit of a reverb. So I am experimenting today with my speakers actually being plugged into the computer, so that won't come into play. Ideally, whenever you're playing these videos back, it's going to be clean. There's not going to be any kind of double audio, so to speak. Hopefully that's going to be the case. So I'm listening to the audio through the speakers, or actually through my headphones. So hopefully that's not coming through over my webcam microphone. Let's return back to Blackboard, because there are a couple of other items that I want to address before we get into the subject of today's class period, which is effective content, delivery, and visuals. I have two different windows open in Blackboard, and I want to make sure that the right one is on. This is where we left off. Today is going to be session 3 of 19. These are always going to cascade down in reverse chronological order, but for our benefit, come back over to course syllabus and let's check out the course itinerary, and we'll leave it right there. Our first week concludes today. Coming back, as you can see, the 4 class periods coming up next week. Time management, as I've indicated on the syllabus, is extremely important. So those of you who are listed to go on day 1, Burgess, Davis, Easter, French, Glover, Graves, and Griffin, know that your demonstrative speech will be on June 2nd. Your informative speech, Wednesday, June 8th. Persuasive speech, Wednesday, June 15th. The final wildcard presentation, the next to last day of class, again, Wednesday, June 22nd. Those of you who are speaking on day 2, Jones, Kemp, Martin, Pearson, Reyna Garcia, Vickers, and Wright. Demonstrative speech, Friday of next week, June 3rd, and then we revert to Thursday, June 9th for the informative speech, Thursday, the 16th for the persuasive speech, and Thursday, June 23rd, the last day of the term, for your wildcard speech. That brings us in course syllabus to what we're going to be discussing today. The speech evaluation form. I used this during the summer as an informal guide for all of you to determine how you can best work on content, delivery, and visuals during the term. So let's go through this with examples of quality content, quality delivery, and quality visuals. First of all, in terms of content, I am strongly suggesting that whenever you are putting your presentations together, you consider organization, introduction, main and supporting points, topic research, fairness, topic analysis, and conclusion. In terms of delivery, and if you're ever on the borderline of a grade during a term, remember this is a public speaking course, so the quality of that speaking style is going to matter. Extemporaneous quality, conversational style, eye contact, articulation and enunciation, vocal variety, nonverbal cues, and your persona on camera. In terms of the visuals, design consistency, font size, color, shading, spelling, grammar, syntax, text, image balance, interactivity, storytelling ability, and aesthetic appeal. What I'm going to be doing today is talking about each of these categories. Content first, then delivery, then visuals. And after I've gone through each of these categories in detail, I am going to play 2 examples of what I consider from the past couple of years to be representative examples of quality speeches in these categories. I have all different kinds, as you're well aware, from scrolling through my website and my YouTube channel, of outlines, videos, and audio presentations of speeches. We're not going to be focusing on demonstrative speech research and topic selection until Tuesday and Wednesday of next week. All I want you to do today is to examine videos from a wide variety of categories, demonstrative, informative, persuasive, and wildcard, to give you an idea of visualizing success as a public speaker in this course. Obviously, the mother's milk of any presentation is going to be the content. So, think about the organization of any public speech that you are going to present. Is it logical? Does it make sense to you? In a time span of 5 to 7 minutes, as you'll see on Tuesday, sometimes people are going to be text-based in terms of trying to remain extemporaneous and conversational. Some people feel that graphics are more helpful for them to remain conversational or extemporaneous. It all depends upon the person. You'll recall that the Jocelyn Keller speech on procrastination that we saw on Loom yesterday was primarily text-based with a lot of bullet points. She felt that was her best way to remain thoughtful and knowledgeable throughout the presentation. But some of you may have a visual mindset, and that's going to make you think about your topic much more clearly and articulate that to the audience. So there are no dead spots, and you can be smooth throughout the presentation. Now think about the introduction to your speech. Is it relevant? And it doesn't have to be always, my name is, and I'm going to talk about whatever you think is appropriate. You don't necessarily have to have a cookie cutter approach. I want you to be individualistic and have your originality come through. Whatever you feel is important related to the topic. Are your main and supporting points apparent? Do they anchor the speech? If you're in a class like this, where basically you're speaking for 5 to 7 minutes, you're more than likely going to hang your rhetorical hat on 3 to 4 major points, with a roughly equal balance of time for each one. Doesn't always have to be the same, but it gives you that security in knowing that there aren't going to be any issues in filling the time. Over-preparing is always a good concept, because many people, whenever they're practicing, between that and the time they start to record, whether it be on YouTube, whether it be on Loom, oftentimes those presentations are going to shrink. You might forget something, or you might speak at a bit faster pace. Is your topic research detailed? In other words, does it appear that you know what you're talking about? A demonstrative speech is easier from that standpoint because most of the time you're going from your own respective points of view, your own frames of reference, so to speak. In terms of fairness, is it inclusive? If it's a controversial topic, or if it's an informative or persuasive topic, you want to make sure that all of the bases are covered. Is your topic analysis thoughtful? It's not necessarily superficial. Will, my friend said this. Nothing against your friend, but probably it would be a good idea to do some research on that particular topic for a substantive, well thought out presentation instead of something that is thrown together at the last minute. And is your conclusion concise? Again, it depends upon the person. So with that in mind, is your content for the organization logical? Introduction relevant? Main and supporting points apparent? Topic research detailed? Fairness inclusive? Topic analysis thoughtful? And is your conclusion concise? So with all of that in mind, what I want to do today is show you examples from the last couple of years of what I feel are representative of these categories. And I could look at any variety of speeches. It just so happens that right now, in terms of content, I am going to focus on 2 presentations that were from the spring semester of 2020 that were submitted to me on YouTube. The first person that you're going to see is Kylie Nee, and this is her informative speech. Kylie is talking about heartworm disease for her topic, and I believe this fits the concept of being a quality presentation regarding content. We've got the closed captioning on, so you can double check to make sure that she is speaking incomplete sentences. If you look noticeably, she is speaking at a veterinary clinic that is run by her family. She has taken the computer and placed her graphics on that, so it basically gives the illusion of being a television newscaster. She's looking at a webcam, or she's looking at her cell phone, and then she's got the graphic in the background. So this is Kylie's informative speech. Pay attention to her content on heartworm disease, and I also have it in closed captioning to check on the complete sentence structure. Here we go.
Hi, I am Kylie Nee, and tonight I am going to be talking to you about heartworm disease in dogs. I'm recording this in the back office of my family practice, so beware of dogs barking and phones ringing. I apologize for that in advance. So first, I'm going to answer the question, what is heartworm disease? Heartworm disease is caused by a parasitic roundworm that lives in the heart and lungs of companion animals and wild animals that is transmitted by mosquitoes. So this means that a wild animal that is running around gets bitten by a mosquito, and that worm then gestates in the mosquito for about 2 weeks and then can be then transmitted to your companion animal. These worms live in the heart and lungs and those surrounding arteries, which can then cause lung disease, congestive heart failure, and damage to many other organs in your dog, which is why it is important to be aware of your dog's heartworm status. What are symptoms of heartworm disease? Usually we see a mild persistent cough, we see weight loss and appetite loss, and a reluctance to exercise. And this is all due to the toll that is being taken on those heart and lungs, which makes the dog just feel absolutely horrible, which leads to a reduced amount of exercise, a reduced amount of eating. And in really severe cases, we can sometimes see Gavall syndrome, which is a sudden blockage of blood flow within the heart, which leads to labored breathing, pale gums, and a dark bloody urine. And in this instance, it usually means that surgery is the only option left to remove those worms from the heart and thereby not causing any further damage. But we still lose a lot of these dogs who are this severe because it is really just hard to bring them back. So what happens if your dog has heartworms? So you go to your yearly visit at your veterinarian and they do a heartworm test and your dog's positive. Start treatments immediately. If that is possible, that's really the next step that needs to be taken in order to reduce the amount of damage that is being done to those pulmonary arteries. And to do this, most vets usually prescribe a monthly dose of doxycycline, a month-long prescription of doxycycline, which is an antibiotic that will help to weaken those worms and reduce the amount of microfilaria in the bloodstream, which are the baby heartworms that can infect other dogs, because you really want to lower your chance of infecting other animals to keep everybody safe. So once you're done with that month-long dose of doxycycline, it's really smart to get another microfilaria check done just to see how far along you are in your treatments. So there are 2 types of treatments that are used to cure heartworms because they can be cured. Slow kill, which is where you get monthly doses of high amounts of melarsamine, which is a heartworm macrocyclic lactone that is used to treat heartworms, and it's also used for prevention. So you get high doses of these, which is usually Advantage Multi or Coraxis, which are preventative usually. And you do the monthly doses for about a year to a year and a half, and it is shown to be effective to kill these worms. But that is losing traction among a lot of veterinarians due to recent research that shows the amount of damage that is being done to those pulmonary arteries within that year to a year and a half. So fast kill is a rapidly rising way of treatment, which is 3 melarsoline injections. And so usually what happens is you finish that month-long prescription of doxycycline, and then you come in and blood work needs to be done before these treatments can be started to make sure that your dog can handle it, because it's really hard on the liver, it's really hard on the lungs. So just getting a overall health check, and then the first dose of melarsoline is injected. And then after that, you wait about a month and you come in for 2 consecutive doses over 2 days, which will kill the rest of those worms. And you do it this way because for the first injection, you are killing the male worms, which are smaller. So you're reducing the toll on the heart when you do come back for those 2 consecutive injections later, which kill the larger female worms. It is important to do this over time because once you kill those worms, you are sending them directly into the lungs to decay. They don't leave the body. They don't just immediately go away. They have to decay, and that takes a really big toll on the lungs. So it's very hard on the dog. So you want to keep them confined and keep them from running around during this time, because you don't want them to overexert themselves, because you're putting even a larger toll on the lungs. And heartworm disease is very hard on the dog in general, and it does lead to some fatalities, which is why it's important to be aware and to talk to your veterinarian and understand the process when you are going through heartworms. But having heartworms isn't the only outcome. There are many great treatments nowadays to prevent heartworms that you can get from your local veterinarian. You can also get prescriptions of them and order them online. So you need to first and foremost, a dog needs an annual checkup with their doctor, just to make sure that they are being taken care of and that you as an owner are aware of their status and understand what's going on with your pet. And the second most important thing is to keep your dog on heartworm prevention year round. When you start seeing a dip in mosquitoes, which doesn't really happen in the South, you don't want to stop that prevention because your dog is outside more than you and is getting bit more than you. So you just want to make sure that you're keeping them on prevention year round. So there are many types of preventions nowadays that are great. First, we have monthly topical treatments, which are Advantage Multi and Coraxis, which I mentioned earlier, that are used for slow kill treatments. There are also monthly chewable tablets like HeartGuard and Simparica Trio, which is a new product that does a lot of other things besides treating heartworms. And there's also 6 injections that are heartworm preventions, which are called ProHeart. And there's ProHeart 6 and ProHeart 12. ProHeart 6 lasts for 6 months and ProHeart 12 lasts for 12 months, which are both really great products. And you know that you're not missing a dose. So it's really effective if you're prone to that, prone to forgetting, which honestly I am. So it's really just an amazing product. Plus, we're keeping our animals safe, which is what is really important. So keep your dogs on prevention. If you have heartworm disease, take the proper measures. That's all. Thank you. Bye-bye.
So that's the end of her presentation. And what I appreciate is she's making, and I'm going to talk about this a lot during the term, guys, she's making an honest effort throughout the presentation to remain extemporaneous. There will be times during your videos where you look off to the side. You noticed it with a presentation yesterday that we watched during class. It's not unusual for you to look especially off to your left and up whenever you're trying to think of something to say. In her particular case, she obviously knows the topic very well. Let's pay particular attention to the content and the words on the screen as we scroll back. This is going to be something that I do for all of you during your respective speeches starting 1 week from today. Do you come across in a confident manner? Is the content relevant? Again, today we're looking at all of the speeches that people put together regarding content delivery and visuals. from the types of treatments. Looking at the camera, being authoritative. What happens if your dog has heartworms? For the most part, she's speaking in complete sentences. The symptoms of heartworm disease in dogs. Still with that, looking at the camera, being thoughtful, being authoritative, being believable. And there she is looking at a graphic and then coming up close to the beginning of her speech in the first 10 seconds. And let's see what it looks like right at the beginning. Usually you're looking at the camera and smiling, and that is what Kylie is doing. So that is one of the two examples for quality content that I am going to show you. I'm intentionally doing this from the spring 2020 semester. As you know, in mid-March, 2 years ago, we had to leave because of the pandemic. The 4 examples that you're seeing, 2 with content, 2 with delivery, are from my Monday night speech class where we had to immediately do a 180 and pivot from a public speaking class that was face-to-face to being something that was online. And I thought these 4 folks, as well as people in the rest of the class, did a really nice job making that transition in as smooth a manner as possible. The second person that you're going to see in terms of content we saw at the end of class yesterday. This is Mackenzie Turner. Just like what you saw with Kylie, she is recording it off of her cell phone. In this case, she is someone who's a member of the golf team, and in her presentation, which focuses again, like heartworm disease, in this case, what students who are members of athletic teams had to go through during the pandemic. She is in the living room of her home, has the computer hooked up to her widescreen TV in the living room, shooting the presentation on her cell phone, and like Kylie, uploading it to her YouTube channel. Spring of 2020, closed captioning is on, how the coronavirus affected spring sports.
Hi, my name is Mackenzie Turner, and I will be doing my informative presentation over how the coronavirus affected spring NCAA sports. What is the NCAA? The National Collegiate Athletic Association is a member-led organization dedicated to the well-being and lifelong success of college athletes. The NCAA is the decision makers for all the athletes that sit underneath their umbrella. They rank among status on various committees for each of the 3 divisions of sports, which pretty much means that there's committees are devised upon sport and division. So obviously football is a bigger sport than golf, so there'll be a bigger committee talking about the decisions need to be made with football versus other sports. Why all the commotion? COVID-19, also known as the coronavirus. Obviously, the whole entire world is being affected by this right now, and spring sports is just another thing that ended up falling under that. The coronavirus is a respiratory illness that spreads like a wildfire. Beginning in China, the number of cases has risen from 1 to over 3,000 in the United States alone in a little over a month. So what happened? The country went into panic as the spread of the coronavirus took off across the world. Large gatherings of people and events were shut down across the country, and the NCAA first shut down large events such as championship games, and then they went on to suspend all spring and winter sports. Pretty much they were just being safe, because with the coronavirus you want to stay 6 feet away from people so you don't end up getting sick, and obviously sporting events are large gatherings of people and it's hard to keep your space, so they just took some precautions and went ahead and just canceled sports the rest of the season. And eventually colleges followed and sent most of their students home to do online classes. How did athletes react? Seniors were crushed as their last seasons had just vanished before their eyes. Student athletes were in some cases required to move out of their dorms and go home, giving them little time to grieve the situation. Athletes were left with unanswered questions about their eligibility and no one knew the fates of these heartbroken individuals. They took to social media platforms to share their grief and learn about it. A lot of these athletes had no idea what was going on. Many of them were already at sporting events and they were just immediately told that they couldn't play anymore. And for the seniors that thought they had the rest of their season, that was a really big deal to not get to play those last few games or finish that season with their team. And over here are a few tweets from student athletes. One of them says, "Heartbroken. I just know it can't end like this, not like this, and it's over that fast." So what did the NCAA do next? Upon the suspension of spring and winter sports, the NCAA took to the media to share their concerns for athletes. Obviously, they did not expect for this situation to come on so soon. They didn't want the seasons to end just as much as the athletes didn't want to. They worked quickly to update athletes, coaches, and fans on the matter and stayed active on social media to keep everyone in the loop. As soon as all of this happened, they started spitting out tweets on Twitter, letting everyone know what was going on, letting them know what decisions were being made and how soon they would get more information. The NCAA granted spring and winter sports another year of eligibility to make up for the devastating loss. For these athletes, the damage was measured in sadness. So this means that sports such as softball, baseball, golf, track and field, all those sports were granted another year of eligibility, which means even though they were about halfway through their season, they get to play a whole nother season, which is really great because I know for a lot of these athletes, it was a really big deal to lose that year, especially for the seniors. Will the seniors stay? While it may seem last minute and many have plans already set, a majority will stay. Just from personal knowledge, as being an athlete, I know a lot of the people at our school will be staying. Once you've played a sport for this long, you're in college, you're dedicated to your team, you've been playing it for 4 years, you don't want to leave that soon, you don't want to leave on that note. For most seniors, these sports have been a part of their lives for years, and they are not ready to let that go. For athletes trying to make it professional level, this is just another year for them to become their very best. While many of them might go on already, some of them need that extra year to better themselves and get to the point where they want to be before they try to take it to the next level. Non-seniors were also given another chance to play and may do so at their institution or carried on in a higher education somewhere. As a sophomore, I was granted another year, and I think it's great because I'll be able to tack that year on at the end, maybe get some more money while I'm finishing my school, or be able to stretch out my school a little bit, have some more time to do that. And that's all I have for you today. Thank you.
So in her particular case, talking about how the pandemic was affecting SAU sports and athletes from around the country in a variety of sporting activities was very strong regarding her overall content. Look at the quality of the graphics. Will seniors stay? She's pretty much looking at the camera the whole time, as you can tell, and I think this is why if I'm in a class right now, I'm probably going to use Loom. The audio occasionally is going to be a little bit challenging unless you have a really, really loud voice, because whenever we get playback on this, her audio is not going to be at the same level as people who are closer to either their phone or to their webcam, which is why I think Loom is probably something all of you should consider unless you put the webcam literally or your cell phone camera right in front of you. Here are some of the other graphics in terms of content. She's still talking about will seniors stay. As you can see, she's got a variety of bullet points. What will the NCAA do next? Remaining extemporaneous throughout. And there she's looking at the graphic, and there's nothing wrong with that if you've got it set up like that. No problem at all. How did athletes react? Very poised. This is where you can tell someone is practiced, even though we're looking primarily at the content now. She knows the material so well that she can refer to, as you can tell, she'll look to her left at the notes and then come back and discuss her personal experience, and she's got some interactivity on the screen as well. So what happened? The COVID-19 statement from the NCAA, as you can see. Why all the commotion? Keeping in mind that whenever she gave this speech, it was right at the end of March or early April of 2020, and the coronavirus was really just out of control. What is the NCAA? Not everyone knows what the NCAA is. And there you have basically the beginning of the speech, looking at the camera, giving the appearance, as she was, of being a thoughtful, confident public speaker. So what we've done is to now look at two examples from spring of 2020, one of many courses that I have taught in the past, but it just so happens those are two thoughtful, content-based presentations, and they were both informative. Now let's take a look at elements that are important for delivery from the checklist. Again, it's informal, but something I think all of you should seriously consider during your respective speech preparation processes. So from the standpoint of delivery, we have extemporaneous quality, conversational style, eye contact, articulation and enunciation, vocal variety, nonverbal cues, and persona. So what do I mean by being extemporaneous? It basically is you are not reading to me. Think about the presentations that you've seen this week. All of the presentations that you'll be presenting over the next 4 weeks. You don't want to read to us. If I want a talking book, I can download one from a website. Extemporaneous quality means that whenever you practice these presentations, whether it be on Loom, which we'll talk about more in detail on Tuesday of next week to get an account, or on YouTube, you want to make certain that during those examples, even those that we don't necessarily see, you are coming across in as smooth or continuous a fashion as possible. With all of the different takes that you're going to practice, that you're going to record for audio or for video, the wording will never sound the same. I have been a college professor for a number of years. Sometimes I teach the same courses. I will go over the same content like I do here, but the verbiage is never going to be exactly the same, and that's fine because you have to be very nimble in terms of your verbal footwork. Your conversational style. Are you expressive? All of us are involved in conversations every day, primarily in person. You don't hold up a sheet of paper and say, hello, how are you? Oh gosh, I'm fine. And for those of you who are with me live, I'm holding up a notepad and pretending to read from it. Public speaking is formalized conversation. You want to talk to us. You want to have that appearance of conversing with us, but it's going to be obviously more stylized. So you want to come across as expressive. Your eye contact ideally is going to be as full as possible, realizing, as you just saw first with Kylie and then with Mackenzie, their informative presentations, they're looking to their notes. Kylie is looking back at her screen for heartworm prevention. Mackenzie is looking to the video screen for NCAA coronavirus pandemic procedures. So it's as full as possible. Is your articulation and enunciation clear? Articulation and enunciation basically means the way in which you are pronouncing words, because obviously if you have proper pronunciation, the articulation and enunciation are going to be part of that equation. Is it coming across as clear? You want to make certain that you're not rushing through your delivery, that you are articulating an enunciating items as clearly as possible. I'm not concerned about people speaking in an accent. That's not really a big deal. If you're in the South, you'll have a Southern accent. If you're in the North, there will be a Northern accent. So depending upon where you are in the country, there will be certain dialects. But as long as your articulation and enunciation are clear It doesn't matter whether you're speaking in a dialect. In fact, that's what makes the uniqueness of American language. People speak English, obviously, in England or in Australia, but their dialects are different. But ideally, the articulation, the enunciation, which begins with proper pronunciation, again, are going to be clear. Then your vocal variety. Is it varied? You don't want to speak in a monotone. Your voice, to a great degree, by the way that you speak, by the way you carry yourself, is going to be analogous to a musical instrument. So go ahead and experiment with your voice whenever you're practicing. And then whenever you're giving your speech, the vocal variety ideally is going to be varied so it's not a monotone. Let your personality, in other words, come through. Whenever I'm looking at you on camera, are your nonverbal cues poised? Do you come across as someone who is self-confident if you know your material? And that's why you've got one major presentation a week. Your content, your delivery, your visuals, ideally you're going to improve over that month. But the nonverbal cues, you're going to come across as more poised as time goes on. It's just a matter of second nature. As I told you the first day of class, so many of you grew up in the social media era with FaceTime, with Instagram, with TikTok. So many of you are on camera all the time, whether it's a still frame camera or whether it's a video camera. Now it's just a matter of being more formal, more thoughtful, more structured in how those messages are going to come across. And regardless, as also I told you earlier this week, of what you do for a career, those communication skills are going to come in handy. People will treat you differently by the way you sound, by the way you carry yourself. So watching yourself on camera, as long as you're being authentic and not a caricature, are very important for your long-term academic and professional success. Finally, is your persona authentic? Oftentimes, I will see individuals who are in the athletic world, I will not mention any names, who come across as being disingenuous, where they're talking a lot, but they're not necessarily saying anything. And I always feel they're preparing themselves for careers in the broadcast booth after they have retired. So are you, with your persona, do you come across as being an authentic personality? Can we see your personality come through? And that's what I mean by persona. Are you authentic? So with delivery, extemporaneous quality continuous, conversational style expressive, eye contact full, articulation and enunciation clear, vocal variety varied, nonverbal cues poised, and persona authentic. And that brings us to two more speeches, but you'll see me first. Again, intentionally, from the spring semester of 2020. There were people who went home out of state. The first person you're going to see, I believe, went back to her home in California, but she didn't have access to any kind of visual behind her like you saw with Kylie. She's just speaking to the camera. Her computer is in front of her, as is her webcam. The person you're going to see is Francine. And this is one or two examples of what I think is a strong delivery of many. It just so happens this is straight to the camera on her YouTube channel. And she's talking about intellectual rigor of courses in college during the pandemic. I'm paraphrasing. We'll put her on the screen. This is her persuasive speech. Being motivated to complete classwork during the pandemic. Straight to the camera, strong delivery, closed captioning on. Here we go.
Hi, my name is Francine Ansley, and I'll be talking about how COVID-19 is lowering educational motivation. I chose to do this topic because I personally have felt that it's hard to find the motivation to do some assignments. Not for this class, but in general, it is really hard to get up and at them. So some background information, the public education system is watered down to begin with. There are not enough resources to accommodate every student. Compared to other countries, the United States has to educate to the masses. So it may look like we're really behind education-wise, but other countries such as Denmark, they have students take an assessment test to even get into schools. So if you're not smart enough and you don't pass high enough on this assessment test, then you can't even get into the program. So we're educating the masses, and we have to include special ed programs as well, and we have to have those materials and resources for every individual student. So with this quarantine, those resources can't be guaranteed. So high schools have stopped counting any online work, at least in California. Because administrators can't guarantee that all students will have access, some schools call online work enrichment, not part of the curriculum. So since they can't guarantee resources, grades cannot be lowered from what a student's previous grade was. They can only be raised. This begs the question, what is the motivation? Why do students want to do any work anyways? If I had an A in a bio class and my bio teacher was still assigning work, but my grade couldn't be lowered, why would I feel the need to do it? Why is it that only private schools carry on? When it comes to elementary and middle schools, for example, my brother and sister, they go to the private school down the street. They've already been using online resources, and their schools don't accommodate to special need programs. So it was implemented immediately following the weekend of schools shutting down. They were already taking tests online and doing assignments, whereas public schools, such as the public high school where my dad works at, for 4 weeks they were doing nothing. It was basically an extended spring break that lasted a month. In California, the mandate says that students cannot be assessed and only allowed enrichment opportunities. So teachers can only improve the students' grades, and students do not have to actively participate in class this year. If you're a 4.0 student and you had straight A's, you could essentially be doing no school for 3 months. So is COVID-19 raising educational motivation or lowering it? Because when it comes to these students, not only are they not seeing any purpose in doing the work, but they are losing educational opportunities as well. When it comes to AP and IB testing, the reasons to do these hard classes are to get college credit and to boost your GPA. Now there's essentially no point in taking these tests and doing these classes because all the tests have been canceled this year. And the class of 2021 does not have to have required SAT admissions or ACT admissions for the Cal States and UCs here in California. So this begs the question, what was the point of prior assessments? Why did students last year and years before that have to be assessed on their acceptance into these schools based on what their SAT and ACT score was? Because now it doesn't matter. How will online learning affect achievement? With social distancing, this can increase student anxiety as students are feeling more and more isolated. With younger kids, communication skills may be halted. Students are basically doing busy work because they're assigned busy work. Since grades can't be lowered, they can only be increased. So students are basically cheating the system and not necessarily learning anything. The argument for this could be, well, now that students have all the time that they want and need, can't they use this time to adapt to their own personal schedule? Isn't it easier for them to study and take tests? Doesn't it accommodate them better? This could be the case for some students, but in general, teachers aren't really seeing this. They're just assigning loads and loads of busy work to remain a constant validity for the class. and students aren't really achieving anything. So back to the main topic point, is COVID-19 lowering educational motivation? Well, I would have to say yes, it is. And you can see that with students just cheating the system and not necessarily feeling the need to do any work. And this will probably be seen with an increased educational gap in the United States statistics, where there already was one, but now it may just be worse. All right.
And that was the end of her presentation. Her situation, not being able to turn the camera around in the same way that Kylie did, so she's just looking at the camera. And I think she does a really effective job with delivery because she is persuasive and sincere all the way through. What it is like during a pandemic to be motivated. She has the aura of sincerity all the way through. Whenever you're looking at eye contact, conversationality, being extemporaneous, vocal variety, is the persona authentic? Absolutely. Is she, in terms of her nonverbal cues, coming across as poised? Absolutely. Does she have gravitas as a speaker because of that sincere style all the way through? Yes, she does. And I suppose one of the advantages of having the computer directly in front of her, this basically reminds me of Loom, other than the fact that the graphics aren't on the screen, is that for the most part, pay attention to her eyes as we scroll back to the beginning. She's being expressive, she's being thoughtful, she's being knowledgeable, and she exudes believability all the way through. And we'll get back right to the beginning. And there she is looking at the camera. So that is one of the two presentations which is YouTube based, no graphics, looking directly at the camera. And that brings us to our second example of what I believe is for many, many speeches of what I could show and will next week for demonstrative week. What you're going to see is Lucas, who is hampered because he tore his ACL. And he'll talk about that during his presentation. You tear your ACL, how are you going to give a graded speech? So he has to adapt. Like Kylie, like Mackenzie, like what you just saw with Francine. It's spring 2020. Like Francine, he also is just looking directly into the camera and is giving his presentation from a seated position. Lucas, who just graduated with his bachelor's degree in mass communication with an emphasis in mass media, this is his informative speech on tearing an ACL. Once again, closed captioning on to check for complete sentence structure.
Hi, my name is Lucas Sharp, and today for my informative speech, I'm going to be talking about tearing an ACL. So a little bit of backstory on why I had this big brace on my left knee. About 3 weeks ago, I was playing basketball with some of my hometown friends. We had been playing for 2 or 3 hours. It was the last game of the day, very end of the day. We were all tired. I'd made a simple move to the basket that I've made 1,000 times. Jumped up, and when I landed, my knee buckled, and I felt a pop in my knee. Immediately went down. All my friends rushed around me to see what was going on. They thought I was joking at first, thought I was kidding around with them, but they soon found out that I wasn't whenever I couldn't get up and even put weight on it to walk. So the next day, I went to the doctor, and my knee was as swollen as a balloon. It was huge. And I got an MRI test done, x-rays done, various different hands-on tests with my knee. And by the end of the day, I got the results back from the MRI, and it showed that I had a torn ACL, a sprained MCL, a fractured tibial plateau, and bone bruises throughout my left knee. So that's why I wanted to do my informative speech on tearing an ACL, so I can give you guys a little bit of insight on what I'm going through right now. So what is an ACL? An ACL is an anterior cruciate ligament in the knee. It is one of the most common types of knee injuries that you can get. It runs diagonally in the middle of the knee and prevents the tibia from sliding out in front of the femur, as well as providing rotational stability for the knee. About half of ACL injuries come with other structural damage in the knee. For example, mine was a torn ACL with a sprained MCL, but it could be a torn ACL with a torn meniscus or a torn ACL with a torn MCL. It kind of just depends on the severity of the injury. So how doctors grade the severity of an injury is through sprains. So a grade 1 sprain usually means that you hyperextended your knee. It may be stretched out a little bit, but it has no tears in it, nothing that's structurally damaged. You may just have hyperextended it, which means that you might be out a few weeks, but it doesn't require surgery or therapy. A grade 2 sprain is a little bit worse. That means that there may be some micro tears in the ACL. There actually may be a partial tear in the ACL, which doesn't necessarily mean that you have to have surgery, but therapy is definitely encouraged for a grade 2 sprain. A grade 3 sprain is what I have, which means that you've completely torn the ACL. You have to have surgery. You have to have therapy. It's the whole 360 with tearing an ACL. So the different causes of tearing an ACL could be suddenly slowing down and changing directions, like cutting, pivoting your foot firmly on the ground, landing awkwardly when you jump, which is what I did, stopping suddenly, or receiving a direct blow to the knee. Like if you're a football player, you're in a game and somebody hits you in the knee, it could cause an ACL tear. So there's different symptoms whenever you tear your ACL. At first, when you first tear it, you either hear a pop or feel one. And like I said, I felt a pop as soon as it happened when I tore it. And usually within the first 24 hours, for me, it was less. Your knee will swell significantly. There's loss of range and motion. There's tenderness around the knee. And especially there's discomfort when walking. So the recovery and rehabilitation for a torn ACL all kind of depends on if you're an athlete or if you're not. Usually athletes take a little bit longer to recover than people who aren't, but you can take however long you want. So normally in a full-time recovery for an ACL is usually between 6 and 9 months. You can even go to a year if you want to. And the rehab lasts from around 3 to 6 months. For me, I have to go to pre-therapy before I have surgery so that I can get some of the swelling out. I can get my range of motion back so that after the surgery, when I have therapy after post-surgery, that it'll be a lot easier for me rather than not doing anything before surgery with my knee. So with coming with rehab, there's a lot of different workouts that you have to do, and a lot of it's painful, a lot of stretching workouts, a lot of strength workouts, and a lot of getting your motion back in your knee workouts. But it is very, very difficult and painful, and it's a long road for anybody that has a torn ACL, not just athletes, but anybody. But one of the biggest things that comes with an ACL and rehab is ice, ice, ice. Ice is the biggest medicine for an ACL. It helps with swelling. It helps with pain management in the knee. It's just a godsend for anybody who tears an ACL. So if you're an athlete, you will be required to wear a brace a year after you tear an ACL just to make sure that you're fully recovered, your knee is fully stable, and that maybe the next year you can wear no brace and play a full game without it. So if you want to, I have a video explaining tearing an ACL a little bit, just like I did. Maybe it goes into a little bit more depth. It has different facts that you may have not known about tearing an ACL, but you can check that out on Professor Reppert's website. And I just want to thank everybody for listening to my speech about an ACL.
As you can imagine, someone who has gone through an ACL issue is going to be able to talk about that very, very clearly because they have lived it. It almost is a borderline demonstrative / informative speech, but An informative speech is basically a subset of demonstrating or vice versa, but that's okay. There are some elements, obviously, of a public speaking delivery that will need to be addressed when you are practicing. I talked about smoothness before. Whenever you're being extemporaneous, you always want to make sure that as much as possible you are speaking smoothly. You don't have a lot of breaks in thought. Some of the other things that will come up will be an occasional vocalic, ah, a dropped G, gonna, wanna, kinda, I mean, like, you know. Some people this week have had those. Lucas had a couple, but they weren't necessarily to the degree where they were getting in the way or interfering with the effectiveness of his overall delivery. But I would much rather have you with a few issues that are grammar based that can be eliminated rather than being too programmatic in reading to us. Let's take a look at the delivery style of Lucas. Very sincere, very knowledgeable, comfortable in front of the camera. He's got his notes, by the way. I asked him about this later. He's got his notes just off of the video screen. In this case, like what you've seen with others, most prominently Mackenzie, recording it right off of this cell phone, all the way through. Most of the presentations, whether they be content or delivery based so far, the individuals have been speaking in complete sentences. Most of the time, the closed captioning is going to capture what you say, sometimes not. But it's always helpful, as you can see at the bottom of the screen, talking about his backstory behind the brace and the beginning of his presentation. We have looked at 2 of the 3 elements of the informal checklist for speech evaluations worksheet: content, delivery. Now let's take a look at visuals. All of this data is available at my website as well, but for your benefit, I'm doing it through Blackboard because that's where many of you are going to go. The design consistency, is it uniform? Most of the time you are going to be using the same color schemes, not always, but certainly for headlines on slides, whether it be Microsoft PowerPoint, Google Slides, or Canva, you're going to be using the same font style, the same text size within all of the slides. The headlines are going to be a larger font. The material within is going to be smaller. So we go from that to font size, color, and shading. Obviously, it has to be readable. Is your spelling, grammar, and syntax accurate? Make sure that you're running everything through spell check. It destroys your credibility if you have something which is incorrectly spelled in the same way that if you try to articulate or enunciate something and the pronunciation comes out wrong, because again, those all 3 tie together, that hurts your credibility as well. Same with visuals below. Is your text image balance comparable? Meaning that sometimes you're going to have some slides that focus more on text, some that focus more on images. Is your interactivity recurrent? If you've got access to a website, for instance, can I access it? If you've got access to a video clip, can I access it? We'll talk about the interactivity element later. In this class, especially during the summer, it does not come up as much as it would, let's say, during a fall or spring semester. Is your storytelling ability dynamic? Do you have clever visuals that are going to help you remain extemporaneous and conversational throughout? And is your aesthetic appeal creative? After I show you the first of the 2 speeches that are focusing on the visual element of success in a basic public speaking course, I will show you a website that you can go to for creative suggestions in case You don't want to necessarily go to a Microsoft PowerPoint template or a Google Slides template, and you wanted to look in a different direction. So in this case, we are going to return to my YouTube channel, and each of these two presentations is on Loom. The first person you're going to see just got her mass communication degree during the spring, like Mackenzie Turner, like Lucas Sharp. This is Finley Blair, and Finley has been accepted to graduate school with a scholarship studying public service at Texas A&M University in College Station. Finley is an honor student. She took this course during the fall intersession of 2020, and she's gotten quite a lot of views. But she used a unique slide template that she downloaded from a website that I'll show you after her presentation on emotional intelligence. It's close to 10 minutes, but it doesn't drag. This is the 5th of 6 presentations that I will show you, and notice that in the upper corner, she is starting from 000 for her time. Notice how it lights up when she begins.
Hello everybody, my name is Finley Blair, and today I will be talking to you about emotional intelligence. So first, what is emotional intelligence? Emotional intelligence refers to the term defined as the ability to understand, use, and manage your own emotions in positive ways to relieve stress, communicate effectively, empathize with others, overcome challenges, and diffuse conflict. In other words, emotional intelligence is basically how well I handle my emotions in my daily life. What does that mean? So emotional intelligence is defined by 4 specific characteristics. These characteristics are self-management, self-awareness, social awareness, and relationship management. So I'm going to go through all 4 of these and kind of explain what those specifically are. Self-management refers to the ability to control one's emotions and how they affect oneself. Refusing to act impulsively on emotions and instead stay thoughtful, managing one's feelings and behaviors in healthy ways, and the willingness to be able to adapt. So basically what this means is being in control of your emotions, being able to control how you react to specific things, and being thoughtful and making sure we're not reacting impulsively. Self-awareness refers to the ability to properly assess oneself in relation to how they are perceived from the outside, but also being able to assess oneself internally, evaluating strengths, weaknesses, and ways to better oneself. So what this means is being aware of how we do react to our emotions, usually how we come off to other people, and making sure that we are doing our best to be like in connection with our emotions, if that makes sense. And when we connect with them, we are able to act thoughtfully on our emotions as well. Social awareness refers to being able to properly assess certain situations outside of ourselves and demonstrating empathy and working well with others, while relationship management refers to the ability to develop and maintain good, healthy relationships based on our emotions and making sure our emotions don't hinder us from doing that. Our next question is who? So who coined this phrase, emotional intelligence? Emotional intelligence was originally coined by Peter Salovey and John Mayer, who were 2 researchers that kind of discovered it, came up with it, and ended up writing about it in a journal called Imagination, Cognition, and Personality in 1990. But this phrase was popularized by Dan Goleman, who wrote about it in his famous novel called Emotional Intelligence. Our next question is where? Where can emotional intelligence be displayed? And emotional intelligence is displayed in all aspects of life, including school and the workplace, relationships, and social situations. So my experience and when I've had to kind of display emotional intelligence is at my job. I work at a gym as a customer service representative, and in doing that, my job is basically to help any customer that comes in, any member. I'm supposed to be able to answer questions, help them with their problems, billing, solve any issues that they may have in a way that encourages them to want to keep coming back and makes them feel cared about. So a lot of times people will come in very, very upset about, let's say they got billed, they don't know why they got billed, they're getting billed more than they thought they were getting billed, or they want to cancel their membership and we have specific policies that they don't agree with. They don't want to follow our policies and they're very upset. So sometimes it can be easy to take someone else's anger and take it personal and kind of want to react on that. But I just have to make sure that I stay very calm, understand that it's not personal, it's them, it's more about them than it is about me. And once I'm able to understand that, I'm able to kind of check myself and make sure that I don't react impulsively and make sure that I just focus on solving the problem and staying very thoughtful and the whole time just being very focused and understanding the goal at hand. So our next question is why? Why is emotional intelligence important? So emotional intelligence is important and essential for navigating in the world for a variety of reasons. But firstly, emotional intelligence affects people and their physical and mental health and their workplace and even their relationships. So it's important to develop proper emotional intelligence in order to have a higher quality of life. When one is able to properly control and manage their emotions, they are able to adapt through the ups and downs life throws at us and continue to solve problems and build relationships. Specifically, emotional intelligence affects our mental health because usually if you don't have high emotional intelligence, you are less likely to be able to handle stress in healthy ways. And high level of stress can lead to things like depression, anxiety, and suicidal thoughts, which is extremely, extremely detrimental for our mental health. Another thing it affects is our physical health. Same thing, emotional intelligence, if you don't have it, you are more likely to be kind of highly affected by stress and not handle stress very well. And the inability to be able to handle stress leads to heart disease, immune and metabolic dysfunction, and can lead to a hormonal imbalance, which is very bad for our body. Our next question is how? How do we develop emotional intelligence and how do we measure our emotional intelligence? So I'm going to go through all 4 characteristics of emotional intelligence and kind of talk about how we can develop emotional intelligence in those aspects. So first, self-management. Learning to control impulse decisions and letting one's emotions have a large impact on our decision making. In addition, learn to process emotions in a healthy, non-damaging way. So basically, what we want to do is we want to learn to manage our emotions. We want to be in control of our emotions because our emotions are our emotions. We don't want our emotions to control us. We want to be in control of our emotions. And I know sometimes it can seem like you are out of control of your emotions, like you don't know what to do, you don't know how to handle, but what you can control is how you react on those emotions. So while you may not be able to control your emotions specifically, you can control your reaction, and making sure we keep that in mind and kind of focus on what we can change, what we can control is an extremely big factor in developing emotional intelligence. Our next thing is self-awareness. So self-awareness means learning to be able to manage stressful situations and being able to connect with our emotions and recognize how we usually respond and how we should respond. So when we are able to connect with our emotions and know that they are not outside of us, they are a part of us, we are able to better respond to situations in a more thoughtful manner, and we kind of are able to know ourselves better, which is extremely important in our quality of life and kind of building relationships with other people and knowing who we want to be around, who we don't, where we want to go, and things like that. So that's very important. So for social awareness, learning to recognize and interpret nonverbal cues others use to communicate, along with better assess body language and other nonverbal cues to better respond in social situations. So what this means is being able to communicate not just by words and being able to comprehend and understand communication, not just given by words, not just given like blatantly like this is this, but being able to understand things using kind of context clues and other things to understand what's going on around us. So this is extremely important, and being able to work with a team, being able to work with other people, because when you are able to have social awareness, you are able to better work with a team. People will, if you, let's say you want to be a manager or business owner, anything like that, people will be more likely to want to work with you as well, which is extremely important. And then relationship management is learning to use nonverbal communication and better navigate confrontation and see confrontation as an opportunity to grow, learn, and grow closer to others, and adopting healthy ways to relieve stress. So what this means is kind of sometimes in confrontation, we think we are right, we know we are right, and so we want to prove that to the other person. So we get into this argument about kind of like wanting to prove ourselves, when instead we should look at confrontation as a way to better understand another person's point of view. And instead of taking things personally and basically not wanting to understand another person's point of view because we feel like we are right, we should go more into confrontation as wanting to better understand and wanting to grow our relationship with that specific person. And how we measure our emotional intelligence is basically how well you are able to handle stressful situations and how much influence your emotions have over your decision making. So if your emotions have great impact, great influence on your decision making and how you navigate around the world, then you probably are not very emotionally intelligent. But if you are able to kind of be thoughtful and intentional with how you are responding to your emotions, then you are probably emotionally intelligent. But the thing to know is everyone has room to grow. Everyone has room to kind of be more emotionally intelligent. And so we just need to make sure that we are focusing on that, focusing on ways to better ourselves all the time. And that concludes my speech about emotional intelligence.
And I do appreciate the fact that she waited a couple of seconds before ending the presentation. Finley, as the other individuals that you've seen, and the final person that you'll watch in a couple of moments, they very easily could have been juxtaposed as examples for any of the three categories that are on the speech evaluation checklist, whether it be content or delivery or visuals. You can also tell that in Finley's case, she is an extemporaneous, conversational, thoughtful, knowledgeable, authoritative, well-read public speaker who had practiced that a lot, because she went through 10 minutes. It was very well done. And most importantly, it didn't drag. But now think about the reason that I wanted to show you her speech. The quality of her graphics, even though we could talk about her content or her delivery. The how, among other visuals. The why of emotional intelligence. The where, who. The what, explaining the terminology. And then we get back to the beginning. So even though, and now we'll go from front to back, even though she doesn't have a lot of graphics in terms of the overall numbers, she makes it count. Because on all of these slides, there is design consistency all the way through with the font size, the font color of the headlines, and then whatever she is using for her bullet points or for associated graphics. So there's the what, there's the who, again, design consistency, the why of emotional intelligence, the how, and she spends quite a bit of time on how, and I believe that's the end of the presentation. But that's okay. Look at her eye contact at the bottom. Most of us, when we're thinking of something to say, are always going to be looking off to our left, which is a key to quality extemporaneous delivery. But I wanted to go back to her title slide and show where she got the information. She wanted to experiment with a different template. So she went to a website called Slides Go. It has free Google Slides themes and PowerPoint templates. That's what the website looks like. In the same way, you'll recall that I showed you the Loom website the other day, but this is Slides Go. All different kinds of themes that you could potentially incorporate into your prospective presentations to spice them up. Because occasionally, If you've ever used older versions of PowerPoint or older versions of Google Slides, there can be some infographic templates that are a little bit on the older side or something that isn't necessarily as creative as these types of websites. And we haven't even gotten into Canva, C-A-N-V-A. And you'll notice that apparently Slides Go is on a variety, as you can see, of social media platforms as well, in a variety of categories. So we'll go back up to the top. But if you find something for a particular topic that is creative, that is thoughtful, that is colorful, go ahead and use it. I have no problem with that at all. Slides Go. That brings us to our final presentation of the day. In this particular situation, the student, Talissa, is using something called Microsoft SharePoint. She's taken, as you saw with Kylie Nee, our first presenter of the day, her computer screen, turned it around, and is giving her presentation off of it. But she also has a unique perspective when it comes to sickle cell anemia. And that is the topic for our final presentation, in this case, focusing on effective visuals. This is Talissa talking about sickle cell anemia. As with our other 5 presenters, I've got it placed into closed captioning. And after we watch this, we'll have a brief primer for next week. So we'll take this up close to 2 o'clock. Here we go.
Hi, my name is Susan Mitchell, and I will be doing my informative speech on sickle cell anemia. Why I chose this topic? I chose this topic because it's very personal to me because I have sickle cell trait, to which I inherited from my father. I also chose this topic because I want to get a better understanding of the difference between sickle cell trait and sickle cell disease and what comes with both of them. What is sickle cell anemia? Sickle cell anemia or sickle cell disease are odd-shaped structures of red blood cells that result in blockage of blood flow to different cells and blood vessels on the body, whereas sickle cell traits are combinations of altered hemoglobin and normal hemoglobin that results in sickle cell traits. So, in other words, sickle cell disease are blood cells that are only croissant-shaped, they are abnormal. Whereas with the sickle cell trait, you have both abnormal and regular blood cells, and they're easier to flow through your body. And as you can tell from the photo up here, this is what normal red blood cells look like, and these are what sickle cell blood cells look like, which are croissant-shaped or maybe crescent moon-shaped, you could say. Another thing I would like to add is that if you have the disease or trait, you will know within 1 to 5 months of you being born. So if you have the sickle cell disease, you're going to know because it's going to attack your body and it comes with many problems and many symptoms. Who is the disease targeted to? The disease is targeted to African Americans, as you can see from the chart. And I'm not quite sure why specifically targeted to African Americans. I assume that is simply because all of us African Americans have a lot of things in our blood that are the same, to which we catch either this disease or we inherit this trait. And another thing I found that was interesting is that this trait is also, or disease is mostly targeted to men. As I said, I inherited it from my father, to which I do believe that to be true, that it is most targeted to men. How can you get the sickle cell disease? Well, there are 3 scenarios that come with how you can inherit the disease. So the first scenario is 50% chance of you inheriting the disease. And that is simply because if one parent has the trait, you have a 50% of either catching the disease, of inheriting the trait, or not inheriting the trait at all. The second scenario is if both parents have the trait. And the trait is very harmful to your body. It doesn't do anything to you. You wouldn't even know you had it. And basically what happens is if one parent has the sickle cell trait and the other has sickle cell trait, it could combine and make the child have the sickle cell disease. So be careful who you marry if you have a sickle cell trait, and be careful who you have children with if you have the sickle cell trait or disease, because you could inherit it to your child, and your child could become very ill or very sickly. And the last scenario, which in my opinion is the worst, is if one parent has the disease and the other parent has the trait. And that is a 50% chance, which I feel as though it should be 60 or 70% because it's very high risk. So basically what this is, if you have the sickle cell disease and you have the sickle cell trait, and the other parent has the sickle cell trait, then the child, in my opinion, is more than likely to get the sickle cell disease. And I'm saying this because with the sickle cell disease, as I said earlier, you have only abnormal blood cells. Whereas you have the sickle cell trait, you have abnormal and regular blood cells. And I feel as though it's like in math when things cancel each other out. So I feel as though since you have the sickle cell disease that has already abnormal blood cells, only abnormal blood cells, where you have a sickle cell trait, which also has part abnormal blood cells, going to cancel out, and the child is going to have sickle cell disease. And something interesting that I found out with the first scenario being if one parent has the trait, then the child has 50% of catching it or inheriting it, is that, like I said earlier, I inherited the trait from my father. And me and my brother are 9 years apart, and he didn't inherit it at all. He didn't inherit the trait, he didn't inherit the disease. He has nothing at all, which I found was odd. And I did a little further investigation research, and there's nothing really to say why this or why that. But I hope the research comes up eventually. How does the trait affect someone that has it? It doesn't. As it says, no harm, no symptoms, no problem. It's like you don't have it at all. Nothing at all. There may be things in your life that pop up that show that, oh, maybe this happened because I had the trait, but that's it. How does the disease affect someone that has it? So if you have the sickle cell disease, it really affects your immune system and many things in your body. And some of the symptoms are infections, fatigue, joint pain, delayed development, urination problems, yellow jaundice, and many other things. And something else I wanted to add is that with having either the trait or the disease, it's incurable. You're gonna have it the rest of your life. You're just gonna have to deal with it. And with me saying that, I'm not meaning in a bad way, but it could be a lot worse. Having the disease or the trait, they both are able to maintain, because the trait you have no problems with, the disease you have a full blown problems, which they can be tamed, and you'll be perfectly fine. And something I want to add is that I had one of these symptoms, but with me having the sickle cell trait, I had yellow jaundice when I was a child, and that's basically when you were born with some type of less pigmentation, very white, yellowish pale skin. Your eyes aren't fully dilated; they're very yellow or very white. And the doctor told my mom that to prevent this and to help it, just for me to sit in the sunlight for a couple of hours a day, 1 hour a day. And as you can tell, I'm perfectly fine now. So I hope you guys learned something from what I said today about the difference between the sickle cell disease and sickle cell trait. And I hope you guys take that along on the journey.
And that's the end of her speech. Hopefully you can hear it clearly. You may have to bump up the audio a little bit because she speaks in somewhat of a softer tone and she's a little bit away from the camera. But even though we're looking at the quality of her graphics, she knows her subject, as you saw with Finley, very well. Very sincere, very knowledgeable, and authoritative. Notice her graphics as we go through. She's got the consistent blood theme throughout, but with her consistency of design, whether it be the bullet points or the font style, all of that data is designed to keep her extemporaneous all the way through the speech. So with these three scenarios, she's not necessarily going to mention every last item on every last point, but it gives her the flexibility in terms of time management to pick and choose whatever she thinks is appropriate. And the personal experience obviously gives her an incredible amount of source credibility as a speaker, looking pretty much at the camera the whole time. There's more on the scenarios. And then we get into who the disease is targeted at. And that's a good example of using the graphic to remain extemporaneous and also showing people the creativity of the graphic. What is sickle cell anemia and the sickle cell trait? Having the disease within 1 to 5 months. Now, let me go back here because you'll notice that the screen was not keeping up. We were getting a little bit of the rotation there. There we go. Who is the disease targeted at? So there's another quality visual. Then we go back to the visual that we were examining a moment ago. Still talking about the trait, and at the bottom, if you have the disease trait, you'll know within a month to 5 months after birth. Looking at the graphic. And then directly at the camera for the beginning of her presentation. And I want to make sure it stays there and doesn't automatically start, or if it does, I can mute it. As we conclude the proceedings today, let's reinforce what we've examined in terms of how you, as a novice public speaker, can improve through quality content, delivery, and visuals. From the student preview mode on Blackboard, regarding content, is your organization logical? Introduction relevant? Main supporting points apparent? Topic research detailed? Fairness inclusive? Topic analysis thoughtful? And conclusion concise? And I think we can refer to Kylie and Mackenzie for quality content. With delivery, is your extemporaneous quality continuous? Conversational style expressive? Eye contact full? Articulation, enunciation clear? Vocal variety varied? Nonverbal cues poised? And persona authentic? In the case of Addison and also with Lucas, again, I think the answer is in the affirmative. As for visuals, is your design consistency uniform? Font size, color shading, readable? Spelling, grammar, syntax, accurate? Text image balance, comparable? Interactivity, recurrent? Storytelling ability, dynamic? Aesthetic appeal, creative? Again, I believe from watching Finley and Talissa, the answer is yes. Which brings us now to next week. Here's the course itinerary. Remember, 5 days off until Tuesday, May 31st of next week. Next Tuesday, we will be examining demonstrative speech research. On Wednesday, demonstrative speech topic selection. Remember that day 1, June 2nd, for the demonstrative speech, we have Burgess, Davis, Easter, French, Glover, Graves, and Griffin. And then on the only Friday that we meet during the term, June 3rd, demonstrative speech, day 2, Jones, Kemp, Martin, Pearson, Reyna Garcia, Vickers, and Wright. And I will take, in the course syllabus area, I'll double check to make certain that no one else has added the course. And in this area, I will place, in addition to sending out on Twitter, the official course speech schedule, so you will know with certainty the exact dates during the term when you are going to speak. As far as today's video is concerned, at Blackboard Collaborate Ultra, the 3 vertical white stripes in recordings, it will be located in that particular area. I told you during the first few minutes of our first class session 48 hours ago that the first summer session goes by very quickly. We have now concluded 3 of the 19 sessions for the first summer session. Now it's going to be your turn. Next week is demonstrative speech week, topic research, topic selection, and then your turn on Thursday and Friday. Watch all of these course videos. Remember, you'll have the opportunity to be the stars on Thursday and Friday, just like with all of these speeches that we saw today. Those 6, you're going to be featured over the next 4 weeks. So if everyone stays with this class, at a minimum, we will have 14 graded presentations on video each week. And I will give positive constructive criticism, whether it be on Loom, whether it be on YouTube, whether you're using Slides Go, whether you're using Microsoft PowerPoint or Canva, Microsoft, any of the different platforms that are available for you to work on. But we'll get to that next week. In the meantime, don't worry about doing any research. Just start thinking about a demonstrative how-to topic that you might be interested in. And then we will reconvene here on Tuesday of next week at 12 o'clock noon. So have a nice, safe, long Memorial Day holiday. As for SPCH 1113, Introduction to Public Speaking during the first summer session of 2022, that concludes the recording session for today.